It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Another Period is a show on Comedy Central with a really simple premise. It's a reality show set in the Gilded Age, like Keeping Up with the Kardashians meets Downton Abbey. Another Period kicks off its third season this week. It was created by and stars my guests Natasha Leggero and Riki Lindhome. They play Lillian and Beatrice Bellacourt, two rich sisters living in New England in the late 1800s. They do what a lot of aristocrats did back then, which is basically nothing. They're self-involved, they're blissfully unaware of politics, and they're desperate to climb the social ladder. Basically, they want to be famous. Like reality TV, the melodrama is taken to absurd levels. The characters are mostly unlikable, bordering on evil. They go off into a studio to recap the last fight they had, only there is also, like, absinthe and servants, and they talk about tulips and the temperance movement. Let's listen to a little bit of it. In this scene from the show's pilot, the Bellacourt sisters just got a telegram, a message about two of their best friends.
It's a telegram for you, Lady Beatrice.
Ooh! Oh.
What does it say?
I don't know how to read.
Right.
Oh, darling, your friends, the Claudette sisters, they've passed.
Our best friends died.
Finally!
The Claudette sisters passing means there's 2 spots open in the Newport 400, the 400 most important white people in all of America, and I know who's going to fill them.
Who?
Us. Well, I'd like to propose a toast to the death of our social rivals.
To the Claudette sisters.
And to tuberculosis for taking their lives at such a young age.
Riki Lindhome, Natasha Leggero, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. That was David Wayne playing our husband, one of our husbands.
I like, I'll watch other interviews in order to prepare for an interview, just to get a sense of how people respond to things and that kind of thing. And I watched this morning a clip of the two of you on the Today Show with Kathy Lee.
And a drunk Celine Dion.
Yes.
I made fun of her on social media for a month after that.
That was astonishing.
Yeah.
Wait, so that clip is available?
Absolutely.
Oh, we have to retweet that.
I watched and enjoyed it very much.
She did not want anyone to have the floor except for her.
And she was interviewing us.
And
she was the interviewer. She wasn't the guest. Yeah. And it was her 4th episode of the day. And we were supposed to drink wine, and then they were like, "No wine. No one's having any wine."
Like, I think she was drunk or something. But it was like 11 a.m.
Yeah. She alluded in the interview to wanting more wine. Like, she said, as long as we keep drinking wine, we'll keep having fun or something like that.
In her defense, they were back-to-back filming episodes of this for her, all in one day. So she had been drinking for other episodes, earlier that morning.
But that is the only thing to say in her defense.
Yes.
She was pretty fun. I came out of this.
You
pro
liked
Celine
it? Okay.
Dion. Yeah, she was.
But you have to understand, we flew to New York for that interview.
Woke up at 4 a.m, got our hair and makeup done. We had outfits. We were ready, and then we didn't get to say anything.
I feel like we almost said nothing. Mm-hmm. And then what was her thing? She just kept being like.
She was mad because her picture wasn't on the card or something, right? Wasn't she like, where's my photo or whatever? Yeah, I don't know. That was the terrible French-Canadian accent.
She did some serious mugging. There's no doubt about it. The takes that were going on when it was in the master shot of all 4 of you on the far left with Celine, the faces she was making.
She was doing some Buster Keaton
else,
stup in there. Yeah, she was doing some full Lillian Gish. Just,
Is that available on YouTube?
I encourage you to seek it out. It may only be on todayshow.com or whatever, but
well, that is my homepage. So
excellent. I watched and enjoyed it. I mean, it occurred to me as I was watching this that here you are on this show, and your show, Another Period, is about a kind of imagined manufactured celebrity in part, right? It's in part a parody of, the reality shows that are about manufactured celebrity. And you're sitting there with Kathy Lee Gifford and Celine Dion, who both are brilliantly talented. I mean, I don't know how you feel about. I understand.
I mean,
that you
Celine
have,
can sing. Like, you can't really
Right.
pretend otherwise. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And Kathy Lee Gifford is a hoot. Like, she's really good at doing that. But they are also like, I can't imagine. It would be hard for me to think of two more kind of unreal, actual human beings in the world if I were to meet them. Like two people who seem less like actual people and more like a projection on the side of a building.
Right,
or
like you're not
a thing.
going through the McDonald's drive-thru with Celine.
Yeah,
Being
exactly.
Like, Egg McMuffin. Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine what it's like to sit next to something like Celine Dion is.
I highly recommend her Instagram.
Oh,
It is just her getting out of her private plane and her private car, addressing her public with her arms outspread. I mean, it's hilarious.
Like a Vita or something?
Exactly. And I'd say most of the pictures. It's so funny.
Do the two of you watch the kind of shows that this show takes its format from?
I do.
Riki loves the Kardashians.
And Real Housewives.
And I kind of love Downton and, historical dramas.
I like Downton too, but I watch most of the Housewives, and I just started watching Vanderpump Rules. I decided I needed another piece of garbage TV in my life.
Well, how did this?
I'm all caught up.
How did this come into your life, Riki? How did you become so committed to it?
To the Real Housewives?
Yeah.
It was weird. I was sort of going through like a stressful work time where I was working so much that I couldn't really take it. And then it just was on when I came home, and I'm like, oh, that turned my brain off. I didn't think about anything. And then I fell right asleep, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. I was watching Real Housewives of Orange County. So then I went back, and then every night when I was doing this job, I would come home and watch these things. I'm like, this is funny. This is hilarious. And we use a lot of it in our show.
There is a quality to those shows that you guys can't.
Is mind numbing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can't do it in the same way because your show's so packed full of jokes. It's constantly moving forward. But there's an odd quality in that show where, especially because of the commercial breaks, they kind of spend half the show telling you what just happened and what's about to happen without actually doing anything.
We should do a whole episode like that where nothing ever happens.
I know. It's like you just feel like you're wasting your time or your life or something.
It is a very odd feeling.
I feel like women are much more attracted to those shows than men because I've had them on before, and if my husband comes home, he's like, you need to turn that off right now. Like there's like a deep offense taken by just how do women do it like around
I think
men?
I have like ADD or something, and it turns my brain off in a way that I can't explain, and I'm just
I liked
happy
watching
for
it too. I liked like the character study.
But the reason I don't mind those two shows is because it's almost because the people on it are rich and they have everything and they're just on there to be famous. I don't feel like they're getting exploited. They're not on American Idol. They're not being humiliated. There's no contests. They're like they're millionaires and they have all this agency and they can say whatever they want and they still choose to do this. And so I'm like, well, then it's your fault that you're on a yacht grabbing this woman's hair. You're 50, you're 50 and you own 25 restaurants. Like, what are you doing?
Are you someone who watches these shows and admires the qualities of the people on these shows? Because, I mean, often the first defense you'll hear, if I'm not going to say who might cast aspersions upon these programs, but it might be someone who uses the phrase cast aspersions casually. But like, the first line of defense you'll hear is, these people aren't dumb. They're successful entrepreneurs, blah, 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 which I think is true, right? But are you the kind of person who is laughing at them or living through them?
I would say it started laughing at them, and now I'm 25% living through them.
Really?
Because we get so much good material from it that it's become like, for our show, I feel like maybe I'm just justifying it to myself, but it does feel like it's also a little bit for work.
I mean, you're in actual show business. Like you're an actual professional entertainer with an act and talent and stuff.
But our characters are like, they're not that different than these.
We definitely want to become famous. But I will say, I would argue that our show also takes from, historical stories and,
That's true.
series as well.
There was a storyline that I really enjoyed on the last season that I want to run a clip from. So the show is set basically during the Gilded Age, around the turn of the 20th century.
In America.
In the United States. And so there are relatively few recognizable Gilded Age celebrities, but you have really worked them into all the
mined
storylines.
And that's part of what the show is about. Is it's so hard to become famous back then. You have to be the president. You have to be,
There's no
something
technology.
Yeah. You have to have an
So-
actual talent or something.
One person who is famous and still alive during the Golden Age,
Gilded Age.
excuse me, during the Gilded Age is Harriet Tubman. And so this is a scene in which Harriet Tubman is essentially teaching your characters about branding, like personal branding.
Yeah.
How do you think I became the Moses of my people? You think they just started calling me that on their own?
Well, we've never really thought about other people ever, so I don't know.
Well, honey child, I thought of that. You ever hear Jelson Paramore?
No.
Exactly. Jelson freed more slaves than anybody in history. But he didn't know a thing about branding. He wanted to call it the slave connection. But slavery had such a negative connotation.
Why?
So I said to him, let's make it about trains. White folks love themselves some trains.
We really do.
20 years later, I'm a legend. Someday they'll even put me on money.
We love money.
And Jelson threw himself in front of a train. Very ironic.
It is funny.
That sounded like a play.
It really did.
What is the mix for your characters on the show, the Bellacourt sisters, of evil, stupid, and ignorant? Like, to what extent is their bad behavior driven by what parts of those things?
It depends on the person. I would say Natasha's.
I'm more evil.
Mm-hmm.
You're more ignorant. What was the other thing you
we're
said?
both ignorant.
Stupid.
We're both 100% ignorant.
We always have a discussion. We always try to figure out who's the worst person on the show. I think it might be my husband.
Yeah.
Because at least I like my dog. I don't know. It's hard to see, but I mean, my favorite TV shows, shows like Arrested Development. It's like everyone's so flawed. It's like how many flaws. It's more fun to play characters with flaws. So I think we're always trying to like figure out how to have more flaws.
My character is like 75% stupid, 25% evil, I would say, and 100% ignorant. But my character also kills people, and she's not even the worst person in the house. She's not the worst sister.
How do you find historical material to inspire you?
We've been to Newport a couple times. We actually have gone there.
This is Newport, Rhode Island?
Newport, Rhode Island.
That's
So
where the show's
basically,
set,
the
yeah.
show takes place there, and the Gilded Age, was kind of centered around this area, and basically, just very quickly, from 1900 to 1910, 90% of all the wealth in America was all in this place. And if you go there, you can still see these amazing places that now are owned by the Historical Society, and people were living insane. I mean, not even like rappers. They were living beyond. And each yard is rolling green hills and then the sea. And, they'd have 25 indoor servants and 35 outdoor servants. And, once income tax was introduced at around 1912 or whatever, people couldn't afford to live like that. I mean, people were making billions of dollars 100 years ago that they didn't pay taxes on.
Right, like Andrew Carnegie.
Yes.
Of the Carnegie Foundation of New York.
Of Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, he on NPR.
Everyone says
everyone
Carnegie,
knows
I know.
that you're supposed to say Carnegie now. But Andrew Carnegie was like a literal billionaire when he died in the teens or something.
Yeah.
He had $4 billion when he died in that money. So I don't even know how much that's worth. It's endless money.
So these people were just insane. I mean, think about what that would do to you. So, there was a story that we read about this woman. We didn't even use this one, but this woman changed mansions because she was too close to the sea and it was messing up her hairstyle. The humidity. So she's like, I'm going to move 2 mansions more inland. I mean, these people were just the thoughts that would go through their heads are.
We have an episode based on a real story of a woman who spent $100,000 on a dinner party for her dog. And that's a real episode.
Yeah, we actually did that.
There was one of the houses that we went to visit, and the servants, they went on strike. And the guy was like, okay, you're all fired. And then they wanted, what did they want? An hour of free time a week?
It was nothing much. And I think, it was at a time in America where there were just boatloads of immigrants coming from Ireland and Australia, and there was just always new people coming looking for work, and they would just live in these homes, and
They'd work like 16 hours a day.
they weren't
and get
allowed
no
to
breaks.
drink, they weren't allowed to marry, they weren't really allowed any social life. I mean, they weren't beaten, but, they did not have a lot of privileges.
You two co-created this show, so why did you not give yourself a fun servant role, instead gave yourself a dumb princess role?
That's a great question, which can be very easily answered by the fact that we wanted to wear crowns and amazing dresses. I mean, the servants wear the same outfit every time. But you're right. I mean, I guess that might have been smart.
I relate to that so deeply. Like when I watched Downton Abbey, by the end, my interest in it was 75% trouser related. Like a sport coat was what I was there. I was in like minute 40, and if they're like, oh, we're going to go hunting, I'd be like, oh, it was all worth it.
Well, the servants are such, mensches, and it's sometimes more fun to play like awful people.
Well, Michael Ian Black's character, whose name
God, he's so good. Peepers.
He is a bit of a parody of Mr. What's His Face from Downton Abbey. What's that guy called? Mr. Carson.
That's it. Mr.
Okay.
Carson.
I think Michael Ian Black's way better.
Than Mr. Carson.
He's
Do
a
you
much
think
better
Downton Abbey
comedian.
would have been improved by the addition of Michael Ian Black?
Yes, of course.
Most things are better with MIB, right?
It really, yeah.
I mean, he's so funny.
The thing that I love about
And
that...
such a great actor.
The thing that... He is wonderful. The thing that I love about that character is the depth of his commitment to his own misery, which is the subtext of Mr. Carson on Downton Abbey, or anyone that here is someone who is so deeply, profoundly invested in this system that also is so brutally destroying his life.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, yes, and I think that you would find that then, especially we also watched a lot of Upstairs, Downstairs, and that's a British show from the 70s, and the head butler there, I mean, he truly believed in the hierarchy of they're royalists. They believe in this hierarchy and that they have a place and that the rich people have a place. And it's so foreign to how we think now. But I do think that was something that was very real.
And this season, Mr. Peepers has some challenges to that where he gets some opportunities to not be so subservient, and he goes a little crazy.
I remember watching the second season or so of Downton Abbey and being a few episodes in and thinking like, oh, maybe from the perspective of the show, all this stuff is good?
It seems a little bit like that. There doesn't seem to be a lot of commentary on the state of servitude. It just
that's
seems
why
to be
it's
like we get pretty things and they don't, or something.
It's so ripe for parody, Like, it's not normal to just be fighting with your husband at the end of the night and then put your arms out and two servants, like, put your robe on you, But that's just normal for them. And also the idea of living with so many people around you and interrupting all the time. It just seems like it would be so annoying.
Do you ever have an introspective thought? Like, I don't think so. You don't bathe alone? Like, I don't know.
It's very
awful.
odd.
What were the things that you learned about life in this time that were the most surprising to you in all this reading and traveling that you've done?
For me, it was a woman thing. I knew women had it bad, but I didn't know that you couldn't own property. I didn't know that divorcees had the most rights. Like, even though they were sort of socially shunned, you had to be a widow or a divorcee to own property or to have a bank account. And if you married someone, your rights and ownership were gone. So it was sort of an advantage, even though you were a social pariah. You had no agency unless you were alone. I thought that was kind of interesting.
You actually made that into a storyline here in the third season. That one of the characters is an accidentally rich divorcee who is sort of realizing the social position that puts her in.
And it's the first time they have any power. Yeah.
Let's hear another clip from another period. It's about the Bellacourts, the first family of Newport, Rhode Island, and constantly real-life historical figures are getting entangled into their storylines. So for a while there, Helen Keller was very involved in their lives, along with her teacher, Anne Sullivan, who was played by Kate Flannery, who folks might know from The Office. So in this scene, Anne Sullivan is thanking the Bellacourts' eldest sister, Hortense, on Helen Keller's behalf for her monetary contributions to the women's suffrage movement.
Oh, well, to me, suffrage.
Haven't women suffered enough? I mean, we're already inferior to man in every way.
Lillian, suffrage is the right to vote.
Vote? Would we have to do it every day? If women can vote, who's next? Horses? Tulips? Beatrice?
I like that I think tulips are going to have to vote.
And then that's better than me voting.
It seems like one of the fun things about having this show, it would just be when you're writing a joke, coming up with a specific that feels appropriate to 1905.
It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
We love being anti-suffragettes, too. It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, because I'm sure that there were women like that who wanted to keep things as they were.
Things are fine right now. It's fine.
It is particularly distressing to watch since the time period, while everyone is wearing ball gowns and everything.
And changing like 8 times a day. That's another thing. Like,
yeah.
It's like a morning outfit, a sailing outfit, a beach outfit, then a cocktail outfit, then you get dressed for dinner. I mean, it's insane.
That's just my life. Just trying to do my thing here.
Is this your morning outfit?
Yeah, absolutely. But that it is, while it is, weirdly Victorian, it has these things like changing for dinner. It also is a recognizably modern world wherein, for these characters, the idea of a woman voting is absurd.
Mm-hmm. But yet it was still brewing at that time. And yeah, our characters just don't get it. Like, we go to a suffragette rally to protest and we're screaming that we're like, women shouldn't have voices. Raise your hand if you want to vote. Like, we have no idea that we are actually feminists underneath. Because our characters do think that we should have everything. And we think we should have everything a man should have. But we also don't think we're feminists.
Why did the two of you end up becoming a stand-up comedian and not quite stand-up comedian, but a comedy performer? Because you, Riki, do musical comedy with Garfunkel and Oates. Instead of just going to auditions like most people who go to acting school and aspire to be actors do.
I mean, we do all that as well, but I think, doing that was kind of like a wake-up call.
Yeah, it was disheartening. I feel like my friend kind of says it best now. He goes, you were doing just well enough to not know how badly you were doing. Like, I was in that realm where I was booking a pilot every year, and I had help, but it would never go. And I had health insurance, or I would have a little thing here that, like, enough where I was doing commercial, making my living, and I kind of thought it was going well, but I never had that luck factor. I never was in anything that went or took off. And when the writer's strike happened, I was like, I need to figure out what my other talents are, because I'm dead in the water. I knew, like, as soon as the strike was over, the auditions that I'd been having would go to more famous people. Like, I just saw it. I knew it. And so I was like, what else do I like to do? And I'd always done I did musical comedy in college. I'd always been writing funny songs and playing them at parties. And in Kate McCucci, my partner, same thing. She had just been playing funny songs on her own. And we were like, oh, let's do this together. This seems fun.
How is it different when you stepped on stage as yourself to do something that you wrote?
Me alone or me with Kate?
Oh, that the two of you wrote together.
It was awesome. It just felt like, I'd been out here auditioning for, 8 years or whatever. You always need permission to perform. Like, someone has to select you and grant you something, and you perform this material. And to be able to just get up every night at any venue and just, and you can work as much as you want, write as much as you want, and say whatever you want. And then to have it work was really crazy. We didn't know if it was going to go well. And then when it did, we were just, that's like all we wanted to do.
Natasha, your persona on stage is so fully formed. What was it like for you when you started performing as yourself?
I think same with Riki, I think I just got lucky. Like, I think some people just have really positive experiences on their first, and also you'll meet amazing comedians who have the opposite, but usually it's like it was either like an awful time or like, they like, I just had like this amazing show the first time I ever went on stage, just doing material I had written in my in my stupid little studio, like locked the doors and was like, okay, I'm going to do this on Monday, and, worked on it all weekend. And I just didn't think they were going to laugh. So then when people were laughing, it was like, it felt like a drug. And I feel like I've been chasing that ever since. I just remember it felt like waves like falling over me. But also then I was remembering that my hairdresser had given me some kind of pill. So I've been trying to figure out
Like, what was that?
what was that pill? It was only a half of a pill.
Beta blocker, maybe?
I think it might have been like Ambien. I don't know, but it was definitely my first time performing.
That is such a crazy thing to take before you go on stage.
I was very nervous. I had never done anything like that, and I also don't take pills. So I just remember it being like a very out-of-body experience that I was never going to just not do again. So that, in a way, I was very lucky, because and then my second show was like, I totally bombed, and people, I think, were throwing stuff at me, and like I was making fun of how the room smelled, and it was silence, and it was just like awful.
But you were like, but that last time.
Yeah. So I think that, and then I remember coming home from that second show being like, okay, this is gonna be hard.
It sounds like what you're really chasing is that hairdresser more than anything else.
The drugs. I should just get a prescription for Ambien. I also was coming from New York, and I thought, I had my own ideas about how LA was, and I wanted to like make fun of things, and I had a degree in theater criticism, so like my critical mind was very developed, and I just wanted to like make observations of like how I was feeling, and it was like a perfect situation for me.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Bullseye. It was really great to get to talk to you.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun.
Natasha Leggero and Riki Lindhome are the co-creators and stars of Another Period, which returns to Comedy Central this month.
I want the money, I want the fame, I want the whole world to know my name. This is mine, I gotta get it, I got to get it, got to get it. Another period.